I now introduce to you my colleague, the Honorable Ronald Lamola.
I bring with you regards from the people of South Africa. As Mr. Jackson says, the free people of South Africa. And our president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, who is also a champion of human rights in the globe. Firstly, as South Africans, a free South Africa, we recognize the role played by the anti-apartheid movement and its contribution towards the collapse of the system of apartheid in South Africa. Majority of you could be third, fourth. I can see some who have been in that generation. And Mr. Jackson Sr., as you say, was part of that generation of the anti-apartheid movement here in the US, speaking in one voice against apartheid. And this voice led to the collapse and the demise of apartheid, but it also continued to champion in the collective conscience of the global community, how immoral and how wrong apartheid was, and how unjust apartheid was in South Africa. It is against this background that the government of South Africa continues to champion the interest of all people of the world oppressed and those that their human rights are humiliated. And it is also against this background that we continue to champion for the African diaspora across the globe. As one of the organs of the African Union, we see the African diaspora's role, and we see you to play a role for us in terms of human rights, but also in terms of the knowledge that you are gaining, in terms of foreign direct investment to help us in the continent. But we continue to champion for reparations that must be paid in kind and in other means that will be to the interests of the solidarity of all the African diaspora. We also recognize the role played by women in this struggle. As you have already said, Mr. Jackson, by our mother of the nation, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, but also here in the US, there has been pioneering women. But we continue to champion for human rights in Gaza. We stand with the people of Palestine. As you are aware, this has been a historic position of the South African government, informed by former President Mandela, when he said that South Africa will not be free until the people of Palestine are free. But South Africa took a decision when the whole world was quiet and said, after the 7th of October, we condemn what happened to the people of Israel on the 7th of October, and we condemn it in the strongest terms. And we call for the release of all the hostages. We also said that the state of Israel's response to the incident of the 7th of October is disproportionate to the offense committed. It is going beyond self-defense as predicated by international law. And it is against this background that we went to the International Court of Justice to call for the state of Israel to cease fire, to stop the maiming and the destruction of innocent children and women, to stop the destruction of civilian infrastructure in Palestine. The International Court of Justice took a resolution and indicated that the state of Israel should cease its military operation. It should cease destruction of infrastructure. Despite the court's ruling, the state of Israel continues to do so. And it is against this background that we continue to call for the collective conscience of the global community to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine, to call Israel to stop the genocide that is currently unfolding. Congressman has said that the Irish and ourselves have spoken on this. and we will continue to do so, despite threats that comes from across the globe, because we believe we are standing on principle. The future of the world depends on the rule of law being protected by all nations of the world. We also continue to call, as we have said, with regards to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. South Africa believes that our non-alignment position is a catalyst for peace and democratic engagement and negotiations. We also, in this regard, are unequivocal about the sovereignty, the independency of all nations in line with the UN Charter. And we have also been very clear as a country that unlawful occupation should, in terms of the UN Charter, not be allowed. And as a country, we call for both Russia and also for Ukraine to engage, to find each other in this ongoing dispute. Because we in the African continent, whenever there are challenges in many parts of the globe, we suffer the most. In terms of the value chain of food, in terms of various value chains that affect the economies of the world. So it is in our interest that as a non-aligned government of the Republic of South Africa, we continue to have the space to engage and call for all the warring factions or parties to engage, to find each other in all global conflicts. It is against this background that we continue to participate in various multilateral forums and platforms to call for the UN Charter to be respected. And as a country, we believe in multilateralism and that these platforms of the United Nations are the better platforms to resolve all the conflicts. All the platforms that we participate in relation to multilateral platforms, we see them as reinforcing the role of the United Nations. Whether it's the G20, whether it's BRICS, whether it's FOCAC, and all the platforms that we see them as playing a role to reinforce the key role of the multilateral institutions of the United Nations. And it is against this background that we continue also to call for the reform of the UN, which we believe is an important platform, but it needs to embrace developing nations, particularly the African continent. And in this regard, we also call for the reform of the Security Council of the United Nations. I want to conclude with our relations with the United States. South Africa's historic relations with the US are based on strong economic and political people-to-people ties. We share a common struggle for economic and racial justice, born out of experiences with segregation and apartheid. The ties of solidarity and the bonds of friendships that were forged between the civil rights and apartheid movements during those difficult times are enduring and should be revived as we are continuing the fight for a struggle to eliminate poverty, address high level of unemployment and inequality, and for economic inclusion and shared growth. The struggle you fought for our country against apartheid continues. Injustice, racial segregation, inequality, and in our countries more pronounced, inequality based on race. And reading from the US, you also have such similarities, where race also determines the future of the child and the future of a particular grouping. We believe this should not be the case. It should be determined by the ability of your skill and what you have been given by God. Like in any bilateral relations, we have differences of opinions or approach with the US when it comes to certain issues. However, such differences should not always be managed based on mutual respect and willingness to engage in constructive dialogue to achieve mutual understanding. It should not be based on threats. It should be based on mutual respect, because we believe our relationship with the US is mutually beneficial. We benefit from the relationship that we have with the United States of America, and we value this relationship. And we also believe that the United States of America also benefit from the relationship they have with us, economically and also people to people. It's a relationship that must be preserved. When there are differences, let's engage, let's find each other, but we must accept that in certain differences, we may agree to disagree. But we believe that if we stick with principle, guided by the UN Charter, by the various platforms of multilateral relations, we will be able to chart a way forward, even bilaterally, with the United States of America. The US is South Africa's third biggest trade and investment partner and a significant contributor to the development assistance. We appreciate the decades and long support for Africa's priorities, including through PEPFAR and AGOA, that have been very impactful and well received by the people of the continent. Similarly, we will also want to see value add by investors from the US in our country. Not only a relationship of extraction of minerals, but value add in our continent, helping us with industrialization, with manufacturing, with modernizing and leapfrogging our country into a new modern society. This, in our view, will be a mutual beneficial relationship that must continue to be strengthened and be worked upon. And this also relates to various issues in relation to geopolitical matters, that such should also be handled at a mutual, respectful relationship. And we will continue to engage with this country on the basis of that mutual respect. I thank you very much for allowing me to participate here. Thank you very much.